All right, so this is all about how to change your narrative, which is the story you tell yourself for good, so that you can very quickly with very specific techniques get out of your own way in your mind, in your emotions, in your neurochemistry even, and even get out of the way of your trauma pattern to make sure that you can make the change in your life that you want to make. So I know you guys have been working on a variety of different things in your worlds, right? But when we start this, I just want us to start by closing our eyes for a moment, okay? So as we close our eyes for a moment, I want you to listen to my voice. I want you to imagine that you're 7 years old and you're sitting at the kitchen table and you can hear that the adults around you are arguing. Maybe it's your mom, maybe it's your dad. You can hear the voices rising. You can feel like there's a little bit of tension that's escalating in the room, but as a little kid, you feel really small. Your hands start sweating. You start wondering, what does this mean? What's going to happen? How am I going to handle this? And a little part of you, that little part of your subconscious brain that's listening, that subconscious part of your brain is trying to figure out what is the answer? What could I do differently? Who could I be differently to make them stop fighting? And part of that subconscious brain might even be saying, something like, if I'm perfect, they'll stop fighting. If I'm the harmonizer of the family, they'll stop fighting. And so, in that single moment, even though you're only 7 years old, you're creating a neural pathway, you're creating a story, a narrative. And that story or narrative is something that is going to continue to drive you in the 11 million data points that happen every second in your subconscious mind for the rest of your life until tonight, when we're going to start to interrupt that pattern and give you a whole new way of looking at the stories that you tell yourself. So, as you keep your eyes closed for a moment, I just want you to remember that any story you told yourself when you were 7 doesn't have to be the story that runs your life now. And while some of the stories that you might have told yourself might have caused some suffering in your life, tonight we're going to talk about how to take those stories, remove the suffering, and allow you to live more of who you are every day. So, I want you to just put your hands on your heart for a moment. And I'm going to do this little exercise with you guys before we start because I want to weave together your conscious mind and your subconscious mind so that you feel a little bit more connected as we go into this learning. So you're going to put your right hand on your heart, your left hand on your stomach. I'm going to have you repeat out loud after me. Hi, I'm listening. Thank you for sharing this with me. Thank you for bringing this feeling to my attention. I will always have your back. I will always be here for you. You are enough for me. I love you. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. Thank you. Would it be okay if we are a team? Would it be okay if we do life together? So I just want you to pause now for a moment and I want you to feel into your body and just notice what feels different. Do you feel a little bit more calm? Do you feel a little bit more relaxed? Do you feel a little bit more emotional? Anything you feel is good. And this is how we bring your subconscious and your conscious mind together so that you can hear differently and you can start to make some of this cool change. So when you're ready, you can let your hands drop, you can open your eyes. I just like each one of you, if you can, just to share what that was like, just to have that brief moment to connect the subconscious and the conscious brain. Did you notice anything or what did you notice? You can come off of mute if you want to.
Um, I right here, I noticed that, you know, like right now I feel scared. I
Mm,
feel scared and I feel I know I'm connected, but I feel scared because I don't know what will happen. But I know it will be okay, but I just don't know what the process looks like.
yeah. And feeling that way, like sometimes we go through it and we connect up, and sometimes we feel scared because that little kid within us has never had anybody say those things to him before. Right? So that's a really good share, Larry. Thank you for sharing that. And don't worry, I'm going to walk you through the process. We're going to go slow, and everything that's coming is good. Promise. Who else wants to share? Tony, do you want to share or?
Yes, ma'am, I'll share. So it was nice to not be fighting with myself for a change and like you said, working as a team. So it feels good and I feel a little bit like I can let my guard down.
Awesome. That's so good. I mean, Tony, because remember that inner battle, if we can calm that and we can work with that little kid as your team, then that little kid's not going to try to sabotage you. He's going to literally be like, "What can I do to make your life better?" And you're going to be like, "Buddy, here's what you can do. Let's do this together. This will be more fun." So really, really good. I love that. Edward, what about you or John?
Yeah, I did feel connected, to my earlier self and kind of helps me move past, my prior self and kind of maybe offer a little bit of forgiveness, I
Yeah.
guess, and that which makes it easier to move forward in like kind of a cleanse and a new perspective on um, my new self, I guess.
I love that. I love that. And that's what we're here for, right? We're here to make sure that that little kid in your adult self can feel so connected because really, we've all been lonely. We've all been waiting our whole lives for a good relationship with somebody. But now we get to work on that relationship with that little kiddo and protect him and give him some love because that's what he's always wanted. He or she, right? I'm a girl, so it's she for me. But I love that. Okay. Okay. What about you, John? What was it like for you?
I felt a little awkward at first,
Yeah,
but
it is.
but then I started feeling more comfortable. Um, I uh, I like the Ho'oponopono in the middle of it.
Yep, good
Um,
job. Good job catching that.
um, but yeah, it felt like it can be effective at making the inner child more comfortable and go through whatever the process we're going to do is.
Okay. Well, the reason why I started with this for everybody, and I love that share too, John, is because if we want to stop sabotaging ourselves in any way, shape, or form, the relationship we build with this little 7-year-old is going to be the most important one in our lives. So if we don't do anything else, if you remember nothing from this call except to talk to that 7-year-old and be like, hey, buddy, can we be a team? Can we do this together? Can we work together on this? If you remember nothing else but this, and you use this every day, it will cause dramatic change in your life. So that's why I start with this, because sometimes, as you go through all the teaching and learning, you might feel overwhelmed. You might feel like, oh, this is a lot, but we're going to keep it simple. We're going to remember we talk to the 7-year-old and then we do 5 things. Okay. So, really great job, guys. I'm going to move on to the next slide. The next slide basically talks about like what is the narrative that holds us back. So, every single one of us has some story and sometimes multiple stories in our brain that tells us we're not enough, we're not good enough, or there's a reason why we are the way we are. Now, for me, I wanted to share what my narrative has been because I think it might be relevant for you guys. But our narratives define our reality, and only if we want to keep living in the same reality should we stick to the same narratives. And a lot of these narratives started from when we were 7 years old, and we made up something in our head to help us survive a bad situation. But then we kept replaying that narrative over and over and over again because we survived that situation and we decided, wow, this works. The only difference is now we're older, we've grown up a little bit, and the old narrative is sort of like an old program. Like how many of us would buy an iPhone 12 versus an iPhone 16, right? We don't want the old programs. We want the new program. We want that up leveling, right? So that's why we're talking about narratives tonight. So here's my narrative, and I'm just going to get vulnerable and share because I feel like this is where a lot of truth shows up. So when I was married to a Navy SEAL for 15 years. And I got divorced about 3 years ago. But my ex-husband used to tell me that I was terrifying. And when he would tell me I was terrifying, I believed him. I thought, oh my gosh, I must be the most terrifying, horrible human being. I can't believe this man that is supposed to love me would say that. And I believed him because I had a very high sex drive. He never wanted to have sex with me. I was so tired of feeling rejected all the time. I told myself that I couldn't connect with him because he thought I was terrifying. Now, what I found out later is that he thought I was terrifying because I have a lot of emotionality and I have a lot of passion, and he didn't really know what all of that was, and he didn't know how to handle it. And so that lie that I was terrifying I brought into every aspect of my life. I told myself, oh, I'm too terrifying to speak on stage, or oh, I'm too terrifying to date, or oh, I'm too terrifying to have a good relationship with someone. And I bring this up because it wasn't until I realized I was telling myself this lie all the time that I could start to work on it. So I started to work on it. And what I realized about lies is that sometimes we don't know in our brain if something is a lie or if it's a truth because we've been telling ourselves something that we think is true for so long. So when we live in a lie, it causes us to have a lot of ineffective emotions. So when I lived in that lie, I was like, well, my husband doesn't want to be around me. He doesn't want to see me. He doesn't want to spend time with me. So I created a lot of like ineffective emotions where I was scared and I was worried and I was hurt. And that led to me making, very ineffective decisions and also having ineffective behaviors. If he tried to hug me, I would like move away. If he tried to like take me out to dinner sometimes, I'd be like, well, you don't really want to spend time with me. So we create a lot of these ineffective emotions and ineffective behaviors and not the best decisions from one story we tell ourselves. Does this resonate with you guys? Have you all been there? You know, there's some story you're telling yourself that is not a good representation of you, but it sort of feels comfortable because you've told it to yourself for so long. So, the reason why I bring this up, the difference between lies and truth, is that there is a lie that you've been telling yourself that just isn't true anymore. But until we have a truth that we can live by, it's very hard to be in a space of having really good emotions, really good behaviors, and then also making decisions that serve us and are easy because that lie is what's been feeling comfortable, even though the truth might be even better than we could imagine. So I bring this up because, if you remember that little kid sitting at the dinner table, he thought if I am perfect, then my parents will stop fighting and my life will be good. That lie might have driven him to do work in business where he had to be perfect all the time. Maybe he became a perfectionist. Maybe he literally had to get only A's in school all the time, right? Maybe he had to be one of the best players on the team because he couldn't be anything less than perfect. Now, if you see him in this day and age, that might have given him an amount of success, but it probably made him feel sort of shitty inside. And so that's why we really want to look today at where are the lies, where are they coming from, what's the truth, and how do we get us to the truth even faster? So does this make sense? Everything I'm saying so far, you guys tracking okay? Okay, cool. All right. So, what I had to realize as I went through my process was I had to realize I had three phrases that were really important to me. I'm enough as I am, I'm wanted, I'm craved, because it was the lie that would tell me none of those things were true. So, I started using that story as my truth when I would interact with not when he was my ex, but while we were still married. And it changed the game for me. Because if I believed I'm enough as I am, I'm wanted, I'm craved, and I'd be in that environment with him, then I would act that way. And he would feel more positive energy coming off of me. He's like, what did you do differently today? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just feeling something different. I changed my narrative and I'm living into that narrative more so than the old one. So sometimes it's as easy as changing some words, but more often than not, you have to follow a sort of like a 5-step process to rewire the brain, the emotions, the neurochemistry, and a couple of other things. So I'm going to walk you through that exact process today. So our narratives only define our reality if we let them. So today I'm going to get you to question some of these narratives. I'm going to walk you through how to change them so you can, on your own, whenever you need to, slow down how you're responding or reacting to some things to use this process for good. So, I'm going to give you a little bit of background first on this concept of trauma because almost all lives in our subconscious are a strategy that come from a trauma in our life. Now, traumas are not, from my perspective, an excuse. It's not something that we want to use as, oh, because I had this trauma happen, now I have this in my life. I like to use trauma as a lesson because every trauma, well, it's big or it's little or it's, confusing, whatever it may be, it's just a lesson we're learning from. So I just want to give you guys a little bit of a background on what trauma actually does in the brain. So if you guys all want to go back with me on a little journey, I want to take us back to being like cave women and cavemen in the like olden times, right? So I want you to imagine that you're this caveman, okay? And you walk down to the water. You come out of your cave, you walk down to the water. As you're getting down to the water, you notice there's this really sort of fuzzy orange and black rock. And you're like, oh, I'm just going to sit down on this rock right by the water. You sit down on this rock. It's actually a saber-toothed tiger. It tries to maul you and half kill you, and you somehow get to your cave without too much bloodshed. You get back to that cave. You're hyperventilating. You're trying to figure out, how did I just get out of that? Oh my God, I just survived what looks like a tiger. I know that thing now is dangerous. That fuzzy orange and black thing is definitely dangerous. So you're back in your cave and your brain starts working for you. And your brain starts figuring out, once you're safe, oh my God, fuzzy orange and black things are going to kill me. Fuzzy orange and black things are dangerous. Fuzzy orange and black things I got to be aware of. Now, you go to sleep that night and your brain continues to tell you that same story over and over and over again. You wake up in the morning, you go to walk out of your cave and you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to go out there. Maybe there are fuzzy orange and black things all over the place. So you start thinking in your brain, I got to put a fuzzy orange and black thing behind that bush so I'm ready if it jumps out. I got to put a fuzzy orange and black thing behind that stone so if it jumps out, I'm ready. Now, the benefit of this for you is you somehow become one of the best hunters in your tribe because you're so hyper focused on the fact that a fuzzy orange and black thing could be around any corner. Now, this is great. You become a great hunter. Everybody in the tribe wants to hunt with you. But all of a sudden, next door one day moves in this tribe of people that are covered in tiger pelts or saber-tooth tiger pelts that are all fuzzy orange and black. And you look over there and you're like, I got to stay away from those people. Those people are fuzzy orange and black. They're covered in that. That means that they're going to be dangerous and they're going to hurt me. Now, isn't it interesting that even though if you join that tribe, you'd pretty much be safe for the rest of your life? They're going to kill those tigers for you. You could go to pick berries if you wanted to because that tribe has that skill set that you do. And if you join that tribe, you're going to be safe. But in your mind, because the visual is so intense, you wouldn't necessarily want to put yourself anywhere near that tribe. So even though the situation has changed, you're no longer having to hunt or be hunted by this tiger. You still don't see that the thing right in front of you is super safe. And it's something that could give you everything that you want. So I bring this up because in our lives, right, we all have saber-toothed tigers that we're afraid of. We all have saber-toothed tigers that define a strategy by which we live our life. Doesn't mean that the strategy is the best one for us, but it does mean that our brain is predisposed to staying in the old pattern because it feels so comfortable. So what I like to do is I like to always wonder, like, what is the strategy that that lie created for me? I know for me that the lie that I had created a disconnect between me and my spouse, right? And so I was like, well, how do I fix this? Here's how we fix it. So we know that the lies are going to create suffering. They're going to create ineffective emotions, ineffective behaviors. It's going to create an environment and decision making that doesn't serve you. And I just reference that as suffering. And I say that because if you look at your life, wherever there is suffering, there is a lie you're telling yourself that doesn't have to be true. I'll say that one more time. Wherever there is suffering in your life, you're telling yourself a lie that doesn't have to be true. But the lie feels comfortable because it has kept you safe for so long. So it's our job to find that lie and to tell ourselves a new truth instead, because if we live in our truth, everything gets easier. All right. I'm going to pause for a second and ask if you guys have any questions on that for me before we dive into this next section. Do you guys have any questions for me, or does that all make sense? Thumbs up. We're good. Okay.
Annie, I have one question.
Yeah.
You said a few slides back that narratives, I'm going to try to phrase it, narratives create your reality if you let them. Would it be, I don't want to say better to say narratives always create your reality. You're either creating the narrative or the narrative is being created. Like, is there a time where a narrative isn't creating your reality?
Well, we're human beings, but we're always adding meaning to everything, right?
Okay.
So no matter what, we're creating some story about something all the time,
Okay.
right? And it's our choice as to whether we want to live in the narrative that is created by default in our
Okay.
brain,
Yep.
or live by a narrative that we create that allows us to own our life.
Cool.
Thank
That's
you.
what I
That was
thought.
so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the goal here is like, and I just put some of these things together because I thought these might be things that you guys have gone through in the past, narrative wise, right? Like maybe you've told yourself that I've been addicted for too long to change, or I need porn because I have a high sex drive, or my problem will go away in a relationship, or I need to release when I feel triggered, or sex is a human need. Like, I don't know what it is we're telling ourselves, but I do know that we get to choose our reality every single moment if we want to make life different for ourselves. Yeah, Larry, jump on in.
I'm so sorry. I have a question. if somebody is living a life of, I want to say, deception, and they're telling you a narrative for years on end, and they're living in a kind of like they can't tell if what they're saying is the truth or a lie, and you yourself are going through like a storm of also like deceiving yourself and telling yourself lies. How do you know, how can you distinguish among the two, like what's the truth? Because if they don't know the truth and you don't know the truth, then where is the truth? How do you find the truth in all of that?
So the easiest thing I would tell you is if you're in suffering and you feel like you're suffering in a conversation with someone or in an action with someone, then you're in a lie. If you're in ease and you feel like, wow, this is so easy, like everything's working out the way it should, like I don't feel anything negative, then you're in the truth. And so that's why, like, if I would say to myself, oh my gosh, I am enough. I'm wanted, I'm craved, like this is who I am. I was like, whoa, that feels really good. That feels good to say. That feels good to live into that. And so I knew that was the truth. That was the easy part, right? But for most of us, we live in the suffering for so long that we think it's normal, right? And so I think the key is that, especially if two people are talking, right? And I don't know if this is like you talking about a spouse or a significant other or anything like that, but like, for example, a woman might have a concept of this is the truth here, and a man might have the concept of, well, this isn't the truth that I understand it to be. And all you can do is you can look at both and say to yourself, which one creates more ease in my life? More ease, more connection, more positivity. That's the truth. Anything that isn't creating that is linked to something that I'm telling myself that might not be true anymore. That might be the lie. Does that help, Larry? We're looking
Oh,
for areas that are easy to feel and to feel good about ourselves. When we're in that ease and feel good feeling of like actually loving who we are and being good with who we are, that's usually an indicator that you're on a good path towards truth.
okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, I love all the questions, guys. So feel free to interrupt or raise your hand if you want, and we'll weave them in.
Annie, if it's okay, I wanna maybe follow up to what you just shared there because I can recall back at times in my life where I lived in the lies for so long that facing the truth actually, I don't know if it was suffering, but it was painful because I knew that by facing the truth that there was a lot of work from cleaning up of the lies. Like, so how would you discern there if the truth is going to be what brings you to ease, but the truth is also going to be this massive, like, oh shit, wake up call?
Well, truth is almost always in some level an awakening, right? Like we
Okay.
don't like you guys are all big souls. So you got big shit to work on. Let's be clear, okay? Like people that don't have big souls don't have shit to work on. And you guys all do, which is great because it's like, great, I'm a big soul. I'm here to do great things. Yes, go me, right? But what Frank's saying here is he's basically saying that when you're moving into that truth, there's going to be discomfort at first because you've been living in a comfortable, like fake reality for so long that as you transition, you start practicing this new muscle of deciding, wait, no, I don't want to do it this way anymore. I want to do it a new way. There is some discomfort that shows up. And then sometimes, depending on, how you wake up, it can be a lot of discomfort. But what I try to remember is when you're in the lie, you see this connection between I have ineffective emotions that make me feel like shit. I make bad decisions that also make me feel bad. I take action or I have behaviors that don't feel good to me. They might, like, in a split second feel okay, but then all of a sudden you feel so bad because you're beating yourself up about the fact that you just did what you just did. And so when that happens, I'm like, okay, I don't like this cycle of being in this. I get a little bit of a dopamine hit, but then I have the negative feelings afterwards. So I used to always look at when are the feelings good and they're sustainably good, even though there might be discomfort in feeling the feelings, because feelings are big, right? And as men, you're always told, like, you're not supposed to feel, you're not supposed to show your feelings, all these things. But sometimes having your feelings open up and show up indicates you're on the right path. There, yes, go ahead.
So sorry, really quick. I noticed that if there's a resistance, I think that's the sign for me lately. What has been, if there's like a huge resistance, like,
Like,
that's
oh, I
the
don't want to
sign.
do it. Yep. The
That's the
resistance is
sign.
the arrow pointing towards you to be like, this is the thing for me to work on. Right? If it feels like at the beginning, if it feels too easy, you're like, there's got to be something more here, right? But when you feel the resistance, that's the initiator, sort of the catalyst to be like, ooh, this might be for me. This might be something I have to look at. We used to always say the resistance is when the arrow directs back at you and you're like, oh shit, this is about me now. Right. So that's very, very accurate. And I think I'm using this concept of suffering versus truth because we want to be able to indicate like where there's suffering, it's almost like you don't want to move out of that place because it feels so normal. But where there's truth, you're like, could I really have this? Could this really be my life? Could this really be how I live? And it's almost like you don't think it's really possible. But that's how you know you can go into that space where there are these positive emotions. I think what happens for a lot of us is our subconscious brain tries to trick us sometimes to be like, well, you don't know what the unknown is, so you shouldn't go there because you don't know. It could be real bad. That's why we're going to stay right here and keep you safe. But the reality is, everything you want is on the other side of the resistance. Like all the good things that you're looking to feel, all the good experiences you're looking to have, they are all on the other side of the resistance. And the resistance doesn't always take a long time to get through. It's just where your subconscious fights you a little bit because it's trying to keep you in that safe place of everything you've known. So, Larry, that was great. I love that. Yes, resistance. You guys, Edward, Tony, John, do you guys feel like resistance is something that you feel when you're about to make a change?
100%. Especially doing after I would in the past when I would have slips and then get back on it, and then I would always figure out what can I do differently to make that happen. When it came time to actually do the thing to make to prevent it again, I'm like,
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
like this.
Yep, yep. And that's where like the intellect or the emotions will always try to pull you back, right? Try to pull you back into the old story. And so that's why when we go through these 5 steps, you're going to see that every one of the steps tries to interrupt the pattern. And that's what makes it more successful. So I love that. Awesome share. Does anybody else want to share about what you found? Is it resistance for each one of you too, Edward?
I just kind of feel like, got stuck in it, and it always felt like the safe way, because it was easy, and
Comfortable.
it was comfortable, and
But it still doesn't make you feel good.
but it didn't make you feel good. No,
That's
you might, like you said, you feel good in like a brief moment, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah, we want you to feel sustainably good for as long as we
right,
can, right? We're like the
exactly.
feelings are so good and they're so consistent. I love that. That's such a good share. And Dominic, I'm glad I just saw you come up here too. So if you want to share, you can too.
Yeah, I would just say, like that's the battle that I feel, when I make a decision to stop, living in self-gratification and start doing what I know I need to be doing right for growth. What really truly makes me happy, serving others instead of serving myself. There's that decision that I'm confronted with, and sometimes it is so unbelievably conscious. Okay, I need to, put my selfishness aside and embrace reality here, embrace, the truth, embrace, the people that God's given me that I love and serve. And like sometimes that is like the hardest decision in the world. And then, other times my mind is more grounded in the truth because I've done the things I need to do to be grounded in the truth. And like it's easy to make that decision. And so I'm kind of, it's like stuck in that part where I want the good decision to become the habit instead of always it's, the a lot of negotiating there just with
There's a lot of negotiating
yeah,
in right between like, I
yeah,
know this is I mean, there are always two paths, right? It's like, do I want the old program that leads me down
yeah,
this path, or do I want the new program that leads me down this path,
for
right?
sure.
It's a constant negotiation. But the fact that you're negotiating at all is, excuse my language, but fucking awesome. That's what we want. We want you to be negotiating, right? Because it'll always get you closer to truth. Love that. Awesome. Okay. Well, how do we shift the narratives for good? Number one, we find where we're suffering. The suffering points us toward the greatest lie that holds us back from everything we want. And we know that that suffering keeps us in the old, outdated program. So if we're feeling suffering, even if we have like a moment, a small moment of happiness, we're not actually in the truth, because the truth allows us to actually feel more consistently positive thoughts and positive feelings that serve us and serve our impact in the world. So I'm never going to hold you guys to an earlier version of who you are. You're always evolving, you're always learning, you're always changing. So is your narrative. And that's what makes you each very powerful. So here are the 5 steps. I'm going to walk you through each one. We're going to use an example from that list that we had before. So the first thing is mindset, okay? Anytime you're thinking about trying to change a behavior that you don't like, you can't start by changing the behavior. You got to change with the mood. So you have to look at, what is the mood that I want to create to get me out of this feeling? So if we think about the mood, which is the way you feel or the tone of an experience, say we use that phrase, I've been addicted too long to stop. So the mood would be, well, I haven't been addicted too long. Every moment is a new moment to make a different choice. So we're creating a mood there where at any second, any time, any moment, I can make a totally different choice in my life. And I'm not attached to it. I'm just like having grace for myself and forgiveness and understanding, like, hey, here's a new moment. I'll try something new. Here's a new moment. I'll try something new. So the first thing we have to focus on is, how do we change the mood to get us in a different mood to take a different action? So I know you guys have probably thought about like changing behaviors and changing and interrupting patterns, but this first piece is where you have to start. Because if you don't know the mood that you want to create, you cannot change any behavior and you can't get yourself out of the feeling that was making you feel so rough. So how does this land? Does it make sense as we start? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I
So
mean, you're basically saying like counter a essentially what you have on the screen here is here's the lie that I'm telling myself, and I'm going to counter it with a truth instead. Um,
that I can feel,
yeah.
right? The mood you have to feel. If you don't feel this, then it's not doing any work for you on your subconscious level, right? Because, gentlemen, the subconscious runs 11 million data points every second. Your conscious thought runs 40. So, what we're doing with these 5 steps is we're starting to consistently reframe stuff both in the conscious mind and in the subconscious mind so they can work together. So, yes, we're reframing a truth or a lie into a truth every time, but we're also trying to feel what it would feel like if every moment is a new moment. Like if you guys actually felt that and we're like, every moment's a new moment. If I mess up, I can come right back and can shift it again. Like that, there's a level of freedom there that you would feel in your actions. Does that make sense? Yep, there you go ahead.
I'm so sorry, I might be talking too much. I
Larry, you do
apologize.
not have to worry about apologizing. No more apologizing. Just breathe in and dive in.
Lately, what I've been doing is I've been narrating my own decisions out loud before I actually do them. So that way I'm like following this clear intention rather than a random compulsive decision. I'm just like, I'm going to do this. And then I prepare my mind and I do it. And that helps me slow down.
Yeah.
That's what's been helping me lately.
I love that. And all I would do is I would add on to it, whatever your intention is, you have to feel what it feels like. Because you can say something out loud, but if you don't feel the power of that statement emotionally, it doesn't move you as fast. So if you can add on that emotional feeling component with this mood piece, then you sort of kick everything into hyperdrive. Because I don't know if you guys know this, but Navy SEALs, when they plan for impossible missions, they don't plan based on putting together like activities or actions at first. What they do is they plan based on emotion. They literally ask each other, if we want to be successful on the battlefield at the end of this experience, what would the battlefield feel like for us as a team? So I say this because most men are like, why would I start with an emotion? That seems crazy. But the emotion is what moves you. The emotion is what makes the decision easier. If you can connect with the emotion first of making the change, then your whole body wants to go in that direction.
Yeah. Annie, so like in this specific case right here, I've been addicted too long, and it leads to the mood. Every moment is a new moment to make a choice. Like that choice is going to be at the moment where our relapses lead us to choosing porn, and it's that feeling that causes letdown, disappointment, shame, guilt. So that's the current feeling based on the choices that we're making. What we would want to do is counter those moods. So if I made a different choice instead of relapsing, if I made a different choice instead of returning back and I won this fight, I would feel conquered. I would feel like a winner. I would feel at
Like
peace
a
because now
champion.
this thing no longer holds control and power over me.
Yep. So we're creating a new mood for what you want to feel instead so that that old feeling doesn't own you. 100%. And Frank, anytime you want to jump in, please do, because you can use this specific example
Yeah,
for what we're talking about. So I love
solid.
that.
Yeah, love it. Thank you.
You're welcome. So then we've got, okay, so we've got mindset up here. We have to create a new mood. The second thing we have to do is we have to look at our conscious thought, those 40 data points that are available to us. So what I always like to think about with conscious thought is, what is my responsibility that I need to change? Because if you think about life, we all have thousands of obligations all the time to ourselves, to others. You know, you're always thinking about, oh, I got to do this for someone, or I have to do this for myself. I have to like make food for myself. I have to eat, tons of obligations. But usually we're holding an obligation that's not true to ourselves, which is why we stay in the old behaviors. So, what I do instead is I think, okay, what should my new responsibility be to myself that will allow my conscious thought, like my conscious thought process, to be positive? So, for example, right, you might say to yourself something like, my new responsibility to myself is to choose me and feeling good consistently or feeling good sustainably rather than a quick fix. So I'm just making up a concept here, right? But if you hold that responsibility to yourself and you wake up every day and you're like, this is my new responsibility to myself today, I'm going to go after sustainable long term happiness, or I'm going to go after sustainable positive feelings, then you have a new responsibility that works with your conscious thought for those 40 data points. So, Frank, would you pull in any other example here around what responsibility someone could hold for themselves that might be counter to what they've done in the past?
Yeah,
I
no,
love,
this is great. So just pulling on a few reasons as to why guys would relapse, right? We feel rejected, alone, isolated, stress, high anxiety, right? Those are the feelings that we feel the need to have to release from. So fear, anxiety, rejection, loneliness, isolation. So the responsibility comes when I feel these things, what is my responsibility to work through isolation and loneliness, right? Like it makes it tactical. Like, do
it
I
could
need to
be,
reach out
I
to
have a
somebody?
responsibility. Yeah.
Do I need to practice gratitude for the relationships that I have in my life? If I'm stressed, the responsibility is figuring out the thing that would be stressing us. And I think working backwards there from solving it, right? We're probably stressed because there's something that's sitting in front of us that maybe we're avoiding, right? The difficult conversation. Maybe it's a financial stress that we aren't putting in the necessary work, whatever the case may be. So the responsibility comes in then figuring out, okay, what actions can I take that will alleviate that, but also not allow me to just drown myself in the stress. So I think those would be a couple specifics, Annie, if that was in
Yeah,
line with what you're
that's
sharing
perfect.
here.
And just, to reiterate what Frank said, right? The emotions that you feel, we get to decide that it is our responsibility individually to manage and take responsibility for our emotional state. Right? That's such a powerful thing to say, like, I have the power to control my emotional state and to allow myself to hold responsibility for that. Right? So, whether it's something that you get caught in that's emotional, we still want to give you the chance to take the emotion and the intellect and have them work together. And that's why we go after conscious thought at the same time as we go after that mood. Okay. So, what I always like to do, this is the quick fix, is I ask myself, what do I think is true about the addiction, right? Like, so I used to love drinking alcohol. Oh, give me 1 second, Tony, and I'll jump in. I used to love drinking alcohol, okay? And so in my mind, I was like, okay, I love alcohol. It tastes so good. I want to drink it. What do I want to be true instead? I want it to be true that I don't need alcohol to feel good, right? So I would change and ask myself, what do I want to be true instead here? So when you have all those emotions flood you and you're like, well, I just want a quick fix, or I want a response, or I want a release, or whatever it is, I always ask myself, what do I want to be true of what I need instead? Maybe I don't need the alcohol. Maybe what I need instead is I need a hug, or I need to ask for some physical touch, or I need to ask for some support, right? So that's what we do as this quick, I guess, question to ask yourself to get you really fast into that conscious thought. Tony, go ahead.
Thank you. Speaking of conscious thought and knowing what you want to be true instead, You had talked about earlier in the presentation how your ex-husband said you were terrifying. And I've had experiences myself of people of the opposite sex saying they were scared of me. People would just tell me this. And that kind of warped my mind and made me think, oh, I am very undesirable to the opposite sex. So I need to become almost like docile in a way in order to become somewhat appealing to them. So things that I've done in like conscious thought, thinking, speaking of this, I would say, really, I just need to be more appealing to myself and become somebody that I want to be around. What is some of the stuff that you did, and is it kind of related to that?
Yeah, so when I was back in that space, what I did a lot was I was like, okay, how can I feed into myself and fuel myself in a positive way? So I'm like, well, I had to figure out like what do I even love about myself anymore? Because when you're in that space and you think that you're not lovable, you're not attractive, or you're not sexy, like that's a really hard place to come back from. So I would just start really simply, and I know this sounds weird and this probably isn't something guys would do maybe, but I used to like I would take really long showers and I would just feel the water on my body and be like, oh my God, I'm so grateful that I can feel this and I can be in this warmth. And like I would just be in so much gratitude for every little touch, every little moment. And then when I'd get out of the shower, like I put lotion on and I'd be like, oh my God, it feels so nice to put this on my body. And I would like appreciate every part of my body because again, right, your bodies go for so long where they don't feel touched, they don't feel loved on, they're not getting what they need. And so, like, I know it sounds weird, guys, but every morning when I wake up, I spend the whole first 5 minutes touching my entire body and telling my body how much I love her because I want her to understand, like, you are so loved, you are so appreciated. And then you're not in a deficit when you go out into the world expecting or wanting things from other people. So I spent a lot of time, like, taking warm showers, warm baths, feeding myself really delicious food, making sure I was hydrated, taking care of myself so much that I wouldn't get stuck in some of those thought patterns anymore. So I don't know if that helps, Tony, but that's some of the stuff that I did back then.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Larry, go ahead.
What you shared, I really related to when I first started taking cold showers. I told myself, like, well, after the first few days, I told my body, I love myself. I love you. It's gonna be okay. And I didn't realize throughout all the years, all the trauma that I had put my body through because I didn't want to seem, quote, weak to the world. So I put my body through immense amount of stress that my muscles, my nerves, everything had was going through trauma. But now I speak to my body and let them know that
Yeah.
it's okay. I'm here and I love it, and yeah,
I
that's
love
it.
that share. I mean, what you start to realize is you got to love your own body. If you don't love your own body, how is anybody else supposed to love your body, right? And so, like taking care of yourself, loving on your body, telling your body how much you love it consistently, and then touching yourself, like touching your body in like even non-sexual ways that are just really caring and loving and nurturing. It's so huge. And most men don't get enough nurturing. They really don't. And I think men are some of the most sensitive, wonderful creatures in this world. So thank you guys for maintaining that level of sensitivity as you go through this work, because it's really important. So conscious thought, quickest question you can ask is, what do I want to be true instead? And you live into what you want to be true. Okay, then we've got the subconscious, right? So we've got to address the subconscious because the subconscious is going to always want a new action or to create a new environment for you. So what I learned from what I went through was, okay, I can't have things in my environment that make me feel like I'm not attractive or that make me feel like I am not enough. So like I would start dressing well and making sure that I looked really presentable because I wanted to look good in my clothing, right? Or I might take a new action and decide, okay, my environment isn't the best environment for me to stay out of this old pattern. So maybe I would only watch comedy because I want to wire in positive neural pathways instead of watching things that have to do with like sex and drama and all those things because I didn't want my brain to be picking up those images and living in those images. So the subconscious environment is so important because it triggers the your environment in general is so important because it triggers the subconscious to push you down old pathways. So this is where I would have you guys look at your environment and be like, okay, what do I need to have around my bed area to not go into the old pattern? What do I need to have around my computer to not go into the old pattern? What can I give myself that is positive and uplifting in my environment to remind me of where I'm going with my journey and with my new behavior pattern, or what I'm focusing on or working on? So does that make sense? Because most times we don't spend enough time looking at the environment to change things in the environment to make sure that our subconscious isn't triggered unnecessarily.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I would say, Andy, probably here
That's
specifically,
very interesting. So go ahead, coach.
no, with this group, it's probably what I need in this environment. And then also, what environments do I need to maybe remove certain things, right? We'll talk a lot. These guys have all heard about bedroom's probably not a place you want to have your phone, probably not a place you want to be caught doom scrolling, no technology in the bathroom, little things, right? Places where
You're
there's
more likely to,
yeah,
yeah.
you're more susceptible, more vulnerable to kind of begin to kind of go down these paths. So go ahead, Dominic, jump in.
I was just going to say it's really interesting at this point because so much of the reasons that we struggle with the behavior that we have today is because of the environment that we were in, as kids or as growing up, and young adults, like and the way that other people treated us or the way that people didn't step in to rescue us from these bad behaviors. And now it's just we're redoing these little things about our environment. So that just kind of stood out to me. That's interesting.
This is one of the best things you guys can focus on because you have the chance to control almost everything in an environment if you so choose. And so, like, when I was really working hard on getting rid of some of this stuff, I made my environment so beautiful and so, like, inspiring that my brain wouldn't go down certain neural pathways. It would want to go to things that inspired it. It would, like, I know it's weird to think of, but like, those lava lamps that you can have that like move the lava? I would have those because I'm like, oh, if I just focus on that for a little bit, it takes me out of worrying about all these other things. So I'd try to have things in my environment that would calm my brain to allow me to be more present and then make better decisions. So, if you can look at rewiring your environment and setting it up differently for inspiration or motivation or positivity, that really helps. So, or the other thing is that I would do for a new action, I would exchange it for a new habit. So, I know this sounds strange, but every time I would want to do something sexual and I couldn't, I'd be like, okay, well, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to do some push-ups, or I'm going to do some squats, or I'm going to do something that was, motivational because I'm like, no one's going to care if you have a great ass if you, take a moment to do that instead of doing something that might cause you problems sexually. So I was like, all right, I can do some workouts, or I learned how to cook really well because I was like, well, I can be really amazing at cooking because that's a new habit that actually serves me and fuels me and is attractive to other people, right? So never be afraid to learn a new habit in these moments as you're resetting your environment. Because if you can do both at the same time, it helps. Now, this is the piece that I always talk about that most people haven't heard about before. So, what I wanted to just mention is that if you learn how to calm your nervous system and you do it naturally and organically, it allows you literally not to feel the same triggers or to amp yourself up as much. For most of us who have ever gone through anything that is addictive, we know that we amplify our nervous system. We sort of turn it on higher gear because it creates more chaos for us. And then we're serving the chaos rather than we're serving the calm. So I bring up neurochemistry because I've worked with the company for a long time, and I found that if you calm your system with some of their sprays, it really makes a huge difference in you not going down the old neural pathways towards the old programs. It actually allows your brain to become more neuroplastic, where it makes it easier to make new decisions and take new action. So I just bring this up because this was the thing that changed the game for me 7 years ago, changed the game for my Navy SEAL husband, with everything he went through. So I just want to make sure I share it with you guys in case it can help anyone here on this call. So the reason why the neurochemistry is so important is that all of us are born with a deficit in our microbiome, and that's the bacterial intelligence of our body is working at like 10 or 15%. So even if you have the most amazing willpower in the world and you have just the most incredible team of support around you, if your nervous system is still hijacked and in this chaotic fight or flight feeling, it's really much more difficult to sustain all these new habits. So that's why I found that this is like sort of the fast track. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Limitless, but that movie was based on this technology that allows the nervous system to calm and your brain to expand. So that's just something that if anybody wants to ask me about it more specifically, Coach Frank can make sure you have my contact info. But I like to make sure you know that the neurochemical boost to calm the nervous system is absolutely essential if you're looking to change patterns and behaviors. So that's why I added in as one of the last pieces here. What that means is your body starts to create more serotonin, more dopamine, more oxytocin, all the feel-good chemicals. And that's what we're all deficient in, which is why we go to all these different cravings and addictions and things that don't serve us, because we're all looking for a way to boost our serotonin. Well, if we can do that naturally from calming the nervous system, then all of a sudden everything gets a little bit easier. And it's not addictive and it's all natural and organic. So it makes it a little bit easier for the brain. So there's that. And then the last piece of this 5-step process is you have to look at the trauma cycle because there's an idea from where we used that phrase before, right? I've been addicted too long. That idea comes from somewhere in your childhood. There's a story you're telling yourself from your childhood that's driven you into some of these thoughts, some of these feelings. And if we don't know what it is, like if we don't know what that root cause is, it's really hard for us to be able to make all the change that we want to make. So this is a much bigger and longer conversation, but I just like to say that if you address these 5 things every time you look at going back into the old story and it slows you down enough to really be aware, you can make some pretty massive changes. So I'm just saying that those 5 steps, and I'm going to go back to the very beginning so I can tell you the 5 steps again. We can walk through them together. You have to know what the trauma is, and you have to know that there is some trauma that causes all the behaviors. You have to understand that you have to look at the mood and create the right emotional feeling to be able to take the right action. You have to consciously rewire your brain to take on a new responsibility. You have to subconsciously look at what action do I have to change and what is in my environment that might trigger me that I have to remove, or what can I add to my environment to make sure that I'm in a better place for inspiration, motivation, and change. Then you get to look at the neurochemistry and decide, can I calm my system enough that I can walk down these neural pathways toward change much faster? And the last part is you have to understand your trauma pattern or your trauma cycle so you can get out of it more quickly. If you do all these things back to back, you can sustain much higher levels of change. So I know, Frank, that was a little bit of excitement at the end with the neurochemistry and the trauma patterning. And we didn't go into a ton of detail on the trauma patterning side because it's sort of more complex. But hopefully you guys can see that these different things stacked give you a much better ability to address anything that you really want to change.
Yeah, no, I love this. And I love that you had the neurochemistry thing in there. I don't know if you follow Gary Brecka at all, but
Yeah.
I've really been going deep kind of in his content. And what you shared here is very consistent with the things that he speaks about, addiction and the gut and supplementation and all these great things. I had a question because you said on one of the last slides here that make these 5 your daily. And I'm assuming this is not a 5 steps completed once you're healed, changed for forever. So
You do it for every thought that you have that's negative. Literally anything that comes up that's negative, that's trying to push you into the old pattern, you're like, all right,
yeah.
what mood do I want to create instead? What responsibility do I need to take on instead? What triggers in my environment do I get to change? What actions do I get to change? How can I calm my system to make this change more relevant? Right? So, like, you're working through this almost every time because you're building a muscle in your brain so that you can make this change faster. So, at the beginning, it takes a little bit of time because you're literally like, what mood do I need to feel?
Yeah.
What's my responsibility? But the more you do this over and over again, at some point, usually, between 10 to 30 days in, if you've been practicing this, your brain starts doing it naturally, and then you're reframing things so quickly that you don't have a chance to go down that old neural pathway, which
So
is
is
great.
that where you would want to be intentional about maybe setting time aside every day to work on the specific thing for you to sharpen that muscle, and then it becomes the reactionary default that
Yes.
when you have future situations that a thought triggers you, you kind of run through this process. But for the short term, to make that subconscious or unconscious, you got to be very conscious about something specific for 30 days. I'm gonna spend 20 minutes for every 30 days going through these 5 steps, even if it's the same trauma story that you're working on.
Yep. It doesn't matter. You just go through the 5 steps every single time. And I mean, there is a shortcut. The shortcut is you talk to that subconscious kid, that little kiddo inside of you every single day. Like if you can't remember these 5 steps, talk to that little kid. Tell him you're here to be his partner, you're here to be his like backstop, that you got his back, that you want to hear what he has to say, and you talk to that little kid as often as he'll let you and as often as you're open to it. And that is the quickest fix if you don't do the 5 steps. So at least this way you have 2 options. You can talk to that little kid all day long, really build that relationship with him so he loves you and he trusts you and you love and trust him. Changes the dynamic completely for the subconscious brain. And that's when the subconscious brain is ready to let go of a lot of the stories and let go of a lot of the old patterns. Or you follow a very specific logical 5 step process anytime those negative emotions come up. And once you practice it, you know, over a couple of weeks, it does start to really shift and it becomes a subconscious process rather than a conscious one.
Yeah. The power comes in probably pairing the two.
It's
Like we
great
did
if you pair the
tonight,
two
like
super quick.
doing the connection between the heart and gut before you do these 5 steps for 30 days and just set that environment for yourself. Yeah, it's going to be intentionality and work and structure and commitment and discipline, all the great things, but it could change your life.
And it does. And when I work one-on-one with people, we do a lot of this work together and we're able to identify what the trauma pattern is that sent you down this path at the beginning. Once you know that root trauma pattern, it really makes this rewiring process super quick and easy, which is nice. You still have to put in the work, but it's the best work you'll ever do.